My name is Lauren Costello. I'm the statewide training coordinator at the Brain Injury Association of North Carolina. And this year is the hopeful beginning of a new series called Brain Talks. We, as the Brain Injury Association of North Carolina, want to be available for any and all questions that you have related to brain injury, our association, etc. Just the full gamut. We are here for you. And if we don't know the answer to one of your questions, we will find someone who does, and we will check back in on the next Brain Talks Live. The eventual goal is to transition this series to a group of individuals with lived brain injury experience so that your questions, comments, concerns, agitations, all of the above are being answered and commented on by people who have experienced brain injury or a loved one who has experience with brain injury. So during Brain Injury Awareness Month, we have a lot of different goals as the association, awareness about brain injury to the general public being one of them. But I also like to think that another one of our goals this month is about community. It's about, often we hear from people with brain injury feeling so alone, like that no one can understand what they've gone through, that they really just feel like they're drifting out and can't really have access to services that they want to. And so this month is the month for you, whoever you are, whether or not you're a family member, friend, ally, individual living with brain injury, advocate, professional, provider, any of you, we want you to get involved, reach out, connect to services, and be part of the change here in North Carolina to improve services and access to services and just quality of life in general after a brain injury. So in addition to Brain Injury Awareness Month being about brain injury, this month is about you. It's about access, it's about independence, empowerment, growth, and support. So if you've made it this far, maybe you've just joined in, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Feel free to write about something you're looking forward to, a message of hope to others, or if you have some questions about brain injury, this will be the great time to write them in. We also have a submission link on our website. And so you guys can access that. And we did get a few questions through that. So I'll be answering that after my little brain injury month spiel. So I'm going to get into that so then we can quickly get into the questions. But because we have so much going on in March for Brain Injury Awareness Month, we really wanted to make sure that we had this time to make sure that you guys know what is going on, how you can get involved. And we pretty much have something every single week, every day. It's really a busy month for us. And like I said, just a way for you to get involved, share with others, and not feel alone. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you guys can see it. We haven't done this before with the live and through Zoom. So if you're not seeing it, I'll just be really good descripting. But so Brain Injury Awareness Month, 2022, it's hard to believe it's 2022, but tis. So we're starting out here, first of the month with Brain Talks. Hopefully we'll do it about every month or so, more if there's a lot more questions and we, want to be available for you. And so that's the live Q&A. This Friday and every other Friday after that, we're actually launching a brain injury video series podcast. So it's going to be on YouTube. It's also going to be on a couple different podcast platforms. Be sure to follow us on social media so that you get all of the up-to-date information about how you can listen to these interview series. We're talking about headaches. We're talking about dizziness. Which happen to be two of the questions that we're having to talk about today. We're talking about allied health, spinal cord injury, service animals. It's just going to be really cool to learn about the different aspects after brain injury and things like that. And so that's going to be starting this Friday on the 4th. We're actually having an unmasking brain injury display at Art Space in Raleigh, also this Friday. And so if you're in the Triangle area, I highly recommend you check it out. On Saturday, we're actually launching our Independence Toolkit. So this is going to be a very large document with a lot of different templates that are schedules, checklists, meal prep, fatigue planners, medication lists, all of these different opportunities for you to be able to download, use, whether or not you're an individual living with brain injury, wanting to kind of wanting a little bit extra help, or a professional carer or anything that is looking to support your individual. These are going to be a really great tool for you. Make sure, again, you're following us on social media so that you can see the Unmasking Brain Injury Project every Monday. And then next week on the 8th, we actually have a Beyond Forum. The theme is Unique and United. And so you can register for that. It's free, and you'll have access to a variety of different speakers and sessions to all about brain injury. And so that'll be via Zoom, and like I said, free to attend. The next day, you can also visit the North Carolina Brain Injury Advisory Council if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the advocacy component and service delivery system in North Carolina related to brain injury. You can connect with us, and we'll get you the link to that if you're interested. You will need to register for that. Then we have Beyond monthly briefings. Those are lives that we have with Sandy Worthington to talk about advocacy, research, policy. That's going to be on the 10th this month. Another toolkit that we're doing, so that kind of all week is going to be all about kind of advocacy and policy and speaking up for yourself. One of those things that tends to become a barrier to getting involved is because you may not feel comfortable knowing all of the terminology, the lingo, I think they call it alphabet soup that is, getting into the brain injury world. So we created this acronym toolkit to kind of break through that jargon and that allow you to learn and then be able to advocate for yourself or others with brain injury. We just got the governor's proclamation document today, and so we'll be putting that out on the 15th for you to take a look at and see as the governor recognizes Brain Injury Awareness Month each March. Follow the Turtle is our live education series run by Kitty Berenger to talk about brain injury from a survivor perspective in a lot of different aspects. Brain Injury Hill Day is an advocacy component that is a nationwide effort to talk about brain injury during Brain Injury Awareness Month, so you can register for that online. On the 22nd, we're having a bingo, a virtual bingo, since it's just the times, but there are prizes available if you want to register. We also have caregiver talks that are going to be happening. And so that's done by Karen Keating as she educates from the caregiver perspective. Last few things, the brain injury webinar series is starting up this month. And our first thing is going to be about music therapy. It's going to really focus on different techniques, what music is, how it affects the brain, and how it can help rehabilitation after brain injury. It should be really, really interesting. And that's going to be on the 29th. That is also free to register, but you must register to view. And then the last thing, we're closing out the month with a CBIS review course. So CBIS is actually our Certified Brain Injury Specialist training that we host. The Brain Injury Association of America holds the certification, and we run the different trainings to make sure that you are ready to be CBIS ready to be a CBIS. So you can learn online using our training materials and participate in this review before the test. There are specific guidelines to be eligible for that. So just check our website for more information about that. But that's it for kind of what we have going on. I'm gonna take a break here and make sure that we don't have any comments, questions, concerns. Hopefully you guys are doing well as we start the month. It's hard to believe it's March. All right. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the questions that we received over the past week. One of them was focusing on one of them, sorry, I just wanted to make sure and check my notes here, make sure that we were all good to go. One of the questions we had was, what advice do you have for someone that is new to traumatic brain injury or brain injury that is maybe struggling to find relief from symptoms such as headaches and dizziness. And these are really common challenges after a brain injury. And I did mention that we will have podcast episodes specifically on these topics. So I highly recommend keeping up to date on that, so that when they launch, you got more information. But headaches, a lot of times there's two different ways that you can take an approach to relief for headaches. Obviously, one is the medication route, and a lot of times neurologists might be a really good opportunity to connect with to help with those types of headaches. Migraines can be really common, where people are waking up every single day with headaches and severe pain. And so medications might be able to balance that. This is by no means medical advice. I'll put that little caveat out there. But it is, and so that's why I'll be very general with my suggestions. There are also other types of techniques that you could use other than medications. There could be specific injections, nerve stimulation. So talk with your doctor for sure about what might work specifically for you. Other than that, there are also a lot of environmental strategies that you could use and lifestyle changes that might be a really good first step if you're experiencing those headaches all the time. Sleep is going to be a really key component of this. So making sure that you're getting enough sleep. Daily exercise, your aerobic exercise can actually help increase oxygen to the brain, keep your blood flowing, and it could reduce some of that pain because sometimes those, if you're sort of like immobile or not really moving a lot, that could be a potential trigger to significant pain. Even just stretching, going on a walk, stretching your muscles, all of that can really help with the entire head body system. Avoiding caffeine, maybe some certain foods that might be triggering that sort of headache. So overall, I'm encouraging really kind of assessing if there's a pattern to your headache. Is there something that makes it worse? Is there something that brings it on, or is it something constant? That's going to be something that your doctor is going to be asking you. So the more that you can kind of assess that before you go in, the more fruitful that appointment is going to be. If you can, sometimes people might keep a log of when their headache happens and describing necessarily like, what does it feel like? Is it throbbing? Is it shooting back and forth? Is it just in one location or like one side of the brain, or is it in multiple sides of the brain, two sides of the brain? So all of these to say, really kind of understand how your headache works, what it looks like, what triggers it, and then see if you can maybe make either the environmental changes or the medical solution changes to helping with that. In terms of dizziness, dizziness is also really common with like vertigo or just general changes in like your blood pressure when you're moving from sitting position to standing position. And that could also go hand in hand a lot of times with like nausea and vision problems. So one thing that we're going to be talking with and during the podcast is going to be talking about dysautonomia, which is a condition in which the individual experiences that severe dizziness when kind of like moving positions up and down and various other times and activities. And so sometimes people might seek help from like a functional neurologist or a vestibular therapist, or even an occupational or physical therapist. So all of these to kind of guide you into those potential resources, potential referral sources. Other things, really just trying to make sure that you're taking your time, never necessarily, jumping into something like, so if you're like getting up out of bed and then you're starting to feel dizzy, really try and take your time, slow there, try and find something to steady yourself before kind of going, because that really could, if you don't have your balance and you don't have your footing before you take a step, that could potentially result in a fall, which are the leading cause of brain injury. And if you already have a brain injury, that's the last thing we want to have an additional one. So it's really important that if you do have challenges with your balance, with dizziness, that you're looking at other additional ways to maybe increase your strength, your flexibility, really kind of increasing your tolerance for balance. So if you have a hard time standing without getting dizzy, trying to build up that tolerance to starting at, 1 minute standing and seeing, how much you can tolerate it, and then sit back down and then try again. And then maybe the next day, try 2 minutes or something like that. Again, not a doctor, so maybe talk to your doctor about that. But those are just sort of some of those things that we hear can be helpful for dizziness, balance, etc. Another question that we received was about tips for communicating with someone with a brain injury. And this one can be really a lot because communication is a very complex process after brain injury. Some people have trouble communicating. Some people have trouble expressing their emotions. Some people have trouble with being able to come up with words like I was having trouble with. But some of the main kind of staples that you can have in terms of communication, is making sure that the environment is free and clear of any sort of distractions. That's going to take on a lot of in processing speed for someone with a brain injury. Another thing you can do, speaking of attention, people with brain injury might have a harder time keeping that attention. So I always try and start with saying the person's name. If you're trying to get their attention, start with that in the sentence, and then, give the sentence or directive. You want to try and make sure that you're not being too lengthy or giving like multiple step processes when you're trying to communicate with someone with a brain injury. You're really kind of keeping it as simple as possible, but not talking down to them or as if they're a child. That's one of my biggest pet peeves in the entire world. But, you just really want to make sure that you're paying attention to your rate of speech. You're adding pauses either at the end of sentences or in the middle of sentences. And you're making sure that you're giving time for them to respond. Sometimes you might have to count 10 in your head to yourself, 5-10 seconds, to really allow them to process that information. It takes a lot of patience, but really, when I think about communication tips and strategies, how to communicate with someone with a brain injury, it's almost like you're providing ramps, just as physical ramps, but you're just sort of providing communication ramps or cognitive ramps for that person. So there are a lot of resources out there in terms of communication strategies. One of my favorite ones is actually from Headway in England. They have a really big book of about 56 pages full of tips that are really specific to the individual. So I'll be sure to add that as a resource on the bottom of this thread when this live finishes. And I know that there was a lot other ones. So let me check. So is there a difference between adult and childhood severe brain injury? There's definitely a difference between adult and childhood brain injury, particularly because of how the brain is developed. The brain doesn't necessarily finish developing until the age of like 22 or mid 20s. So when someone has a full brain, has an adult brain injury, then they, I'm just trying to read this now. Yes, but the jury is still out on this one. It is thought that children with severe brain injury have the advantage and disadvantage of youth on their side. The disadvantages that children are more susceptible to brain injury because of how thin their developing skull is. And many effects will not be seen until they mature. So if they're going through, childhood and schooling, a lot of times their cognitive demands are not as high as someone that is an adult with a brain injury. And so you see it later on, they begin to struggle with development and adulting, if you would. When an adult acquires a brain injury, it might result in a loss of function, but children may not have acquired those skills or functions yet. So instead of experiencing a loss, they may never really acquire the skill of function to begin with. So there's a lot of differences really in terms of just development and what you experience. I know a lot of people with adults with severe brain injury, they have already kind of created and developed a life, a personality. And so you see a lot more challenges with adjustment and familial relationships because they are experiencing such a different change in what was normal to them. So the next question I'm going to reach is, can a mild brain injury create psychiatric problems? And this is really common. I think I saw the most recent statistic was that 1 in 5 individuals with a mild traumatic brain injury will experience psychiatric conditions, such as depression, anxiety. Of course, there are a lot of different reasons behind this. Psychiatric conditions can be caused by biological function, environment, experiences, resilience, trauma, etc. But there has been seen that kind of correlation between the psychiatric conditions, and a lot of times there's a correlation with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and that becomes really challenging to navigate. What is a mild traumatic brain injury? What is post-traumatic stress disorder? I always, encourage people, it's not necessarily about the diagnosis, but what symptoms are you having and how can we either tackle those symptoms or get you connected to someone who's going to help you with them. Can the survivor drive after a brain injury? That's a really good question, and something that it depends very much on the person, but there are individuals with brain injury that drive. And there's also a lot of different modifications that someone can either request or access to either a change to their personal vehicle or getting a specific equipped van to help them with their needs. I will say that there are some individuals with brain injury that experience seizures, and that's typically what prevents a lot of people from driving. That, as well as any sort of visual challenges. Those are when there's going to be sort of a halt or either a look at their driving capabilities. A lot of OTs can help you with the sort of finding out whether or not driving is the right position for you or the right path for you. And you can connect with the, I know that there's a place in the middle of North Carolina that does have kind of like driving schools for individuals with disabilities, including brain injury. And I've reached out to them a couple of times. So I would say, it's not necessarily a deal breaker. You want to make sure that you feel safe, that the others feel safe, and obviously any sort of barring any medical complications, people with brain injury can drive. It just might depend on the individual factors that could interrupt that. How much will a survivor recover from a severe brain injury? That one is always going to depend on who the person is. No two brain injuries are, no two injuries, I would say, are similar. And so obviously when you layer that on top of the fact that no two people are similar, it's going to be so different. And so when, I always say that when there's, we classify traumatic brain injury as mild, moderate, and severe, but it's really, that's only talking about the loss of consciousness, the appearance of the injury on brain scans, and any sort of distortion of memory or cognition afterwards. So it doesn't necessarily attribute to what type of symptoms the individual is going to experience and how it's going to have an impact on their life. There's so many different factors that that build up to that, and that could be the area of injury, the actual extent of the injury. A lot of people might have that primary injury where their brain was actually hit or experience the change in function, but then there's also the secondary potential injuries that could cause more significant challenges like swelling or excess bleeding or lack of oxygen to a specific area of the brain. All of these, in addition to support, resilience, determination, and any of that is going to make a really big impact on functional recovery. Some people may take, 1 to 2 years and they return to, pretty good functioning. Some people never regain functioning. Some people are thriving, with a job, with a family, etc. I never consider, there's no way to accurately tell how long recovery is going to take or rehabilitation. And I think that's the hardest part for a lot of people. I know that we hear a lot from the medical community, oh, like 2 years, and that's going to be what the extent of your progress. But I am here to say that that is not necessarily true. I see growth in individuals living with brain injury every single day, no matter the length of time of their brain injury. Not to say that you shouldn't, try and do as much as you can early on, because that's when your brain is kind of functioning and you're putting all the energy into rehabilitation. But just saying that people with severe brain injury, mild brain injury, moderate, mild, it really doesn't matter. It just depends on a lot of other different factors. And I think a lot of it is connecting to supports, getting access to those rehabilitation therapies, support groups, which we have listed on our website, other types of doctors. Having a team in your corner is going to promote success a lot more than any sort of label of where you started. I think it's about the continual supports as you're going through this process. Unfortunately, it's not necessarily a one-time thing. It's really oftentimes a lifelong way you experience these challenges. So I'm so glad that you guys were, really interested in this. I know that there were more questions that I didn't get to, but I'm sure you guys are tired of listening to me now. And so I we'll catalog all of these questions, and we'll either do another session here in March, or we'll check back in April. Either way, I really appreciate you guys' time, energy, efforts, thoughts. If you have anything else that you can think of, maybe you need a little bit more time to process all this information, feel free to use this thread, or you can go on our website and put a submission in that way. You can also just contact us, give us an email, and anything like that. So be sure to sign up for our newsletter at the bottom of the homepage of our website so that you can get up-to-date information. Follow us on social media so that you can keep up to date on all the things that we have happening this month. And if you have any questions on how you can get involved, or maybe some ideas that you want to throw out there, but you're not sure how to get started, never hesitate to contact us. We are here as the Brain Injury Association of North Carolina to provide help, hope, and a voice for individuals living with brain injury and their families and professionals. So I just really appreciate you guys. Welcome to Brain Injury Awareness Month, and I look forward to